In 2014, a crowd of frustrated Ukrainians came together to properly dispose of their trash. Well, sort of. What really happened was that an angry mob grabbed an MP, Vitaly Jurovsky, and tossed him straight into a dumpster. Why? He was seen as a symbol of political corruption and the failures of the government. He was also associated with passing a controversial bill that restricted freedom of speech, fueling public outrage. People were fed up, and they took matters and a politician into their own hands. Now, this headline might sound absurd, and sure, you could say it's an appropriate place to dispose of that kind of trash, but it reflects something bigger. What happens when we ignore our messes and let problems pile up? And trust me, I'm not even talking about the 1.5 tons of solid waste you alone produce per year. Yeah, the number's that high. From the mountains of garbage on our streets to the endless stretches of waste in our oceans, human beings are masters of generating trash. It's a visible, tangible problem, one of the greatest challenges of our time. Since the dawn of civilization, human progress has come with an unavoidable consequence: waste. We've always struggled on how to manage our trash. In the modern world, it's more apparent than ever. Landfills stretch for miles, our oceans host floating islands of plastic, and pollution threatens ecosystems around the globe. Even one or two politicians find themselves in the trash can every once in a while. But while we grapple with the mess on Earth, we often overlook a far more insidious dump, a place most of us never see but are profoundly affected by. And before I tell you what it is, let's make a deal. If you like where this story's going, you're gonna leave a like and subscribe to the channel, okay? Back to the issue. High above us, circling our world, lies the largest trash dump ever created by humankind, and it's growing every day. As a child, I was captivated by the stars and dreamed of becoming an astronaut and also a famous artist. I spent countless hours gazing at the night sky, writing songs, wondering about the mysteries of the universe and the possibility of broadcasting my concert from the moon. But as I grew older, I realized how distant the moon actually is and how it's getting harder to get there. So, I might just stick with shows on Earth for now. Anyways, beyond the blue sky lies a graveyard. Thousands upon thousands of fragments, remnants of decades of ambition and neglect. Each one, a potential disaster waiting to happen. Space debris, or orbital junk, isn't science fiction. It's the legacy of human exploration. Since day one of the space age, we have sent up thousands of satellites, probes, and spacecraft, and with those, we left behind a crowd of forgotten pieces, defunct satellites, shattered rocket stages, and the debris of collisions. Today, over 36,000 tracked objects larger than 4 inches orbit the Earth, and these are only the ones we can see. Experts warn that if we don't change course, collisions will trigger a chain reaction, rendering space unusable for generations. The next number is even scarier. According to NASA, there are more than 128 million pieces of debris between 1 millimeter and 1 centimeter, which are still capable of causing significant damage to operational satellites. In 2007, China's anti-satellite missile test added over 3,000 pieces of debris, forcing the International Space Station to maneuver to avoid collision. It must be terrifying out there, dodging debris. I highly recommend you read astronaut Thomas David Jones's book, Space Shuttle Stories. It's packed with first-hand experiences and brings the challenges of space missions to life in vivid detail. I left a link for it in the description of the video. In 2009, an inactive Russian satellite collided with the active commercial satellite Iridium-33, projecting more than 1,800 fragments in every direction. Current projections suggest that if trends continue unchecked, by 2050, our orbit could be so congested that safe passage becomes a near impossibility. Well, at least the risk of alien invasion is mitigated. I'm trying to sound serious here. But before we go down the rabbit hole, we gotta address the source of this problem. So, how did we get to this point? To understand how we arrived at this critical juncture with space debris and the risk of Kessler syndrome, relax. If you don't know what this is, I'll explain in a minute. We need to look back at the origins of space exploration. It all began during the space race of the 1950s and 60s. The United States and the Soviet Union were competing fiercely to achieve milestones in space. This era brought incredible technological advances, but also left behind a whole lot of space debris. Early satellites, defunct spacecraft, and the spent stages of rockets were left in orbit without any plan for disposal. And yes, I understand. We've evolved a lot, our technologies got better, we benefit from the space race and the subsequent missions to this day, and counting. I'm not anti-space programs or any sort of flat Earth cuckoo head. The thing is, as space technology progressed through the 1970s and 80s, the debris problem slowly escalated. By the 90s, satellite launches had become routine, and the number of objects in space grew steadily. In recent years, however, the space industry has seen explosive growth, driven by the rise of private companies and a boom in commercial satellite projects. Companies like SpaceX, with their ambitious mega constellations, have launched thousands of satellites to provide global internet coverage. With each launch, the potential for collision increases. Debris from old satellites and collisions adds to the problem. And today, as we discussed before, there are countless small debris, untrackable fragments zipping through low Earth orbit at speeds up to 28,000 kilometers per hour. Imagine trying to catch that. Even a tiny piece of debris can cause catastrophic damage to active satellites or space missions. And that's how we got here. Decades of unregulated launches, limited awareness, and an unprecedented increase in satellite traffic have brought us to the edge of the Kessler syndrome. Okay, let me tell you, where the heck does this name Kessler syndrome come from? In 1978, during the Cold War competition and space race, a large number of satellites and space missions were being launched. Both the US and Soviet Union were prioritizing national pride and technological dominance, ignoring the potential damage and negative impact this would cause. By that time, astrophysicist Donald J. Kessler was working at NASA's Johnson Space Center and recognized the implications of an unchecked increase in space debris. Kessler proposed that as more objects accumulated in orbit, the likelihood of collisions would increase, eventually leading to a chain reaction. So when the amount of space debris in Earth's orbit reaches a tipping point, one piece of debris will eventually collide with a satellite, creating even more debris. This debris then collides with other satellites and debris, creating a chain reaction. Over time, this could form a belt of junk that makes it dangerous, or even impossible, for satellites or spacecraft to safely travel through Earth's orbit. Yay! An external layer to protect us from UV rays. That's fantastic. All jokes aside, now you know what is Kessler syndrome, a potential yet serious risk that could change space missions forever. You could be asking yourself, okay, this is bad, but what does it have to do with me? I'm not an astronaut, nor a scientist. I don't work for NASA or Elon Musk, and I don't think I'll be in a rocket in this lifetime. So, no risks at all, right? Right? Well, not quite. Although most of us won't ever be able to fly to outer space, our daily lives are deeply connected to the satellites orbiting above us. These satellites power global communications, navigation, weather forecasting, but with the growing risk of Kessler syndrome, the chain reaction of space debris collisions could make large parts of Earth's orbit unusable. Imagine entire areas of space filled with so much junk that new satellites can be launched, and existing ones are at constant risk of being destroyed. This could mean massive disruptions in the services we depend on. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, eager to see what Kim Kardashian posted on Instagram, and realizing your phone is useless. No internet, no social media, no way to contact loved ones. This might sound like a dystopian nightmare, but it's a real possibility. Communication networks could break down, affecting everything from phone calls and internet access to international business operations. GPS outages could impact navigation for planes, ships, and even everyday driving. So, goodbye social media. I know for some this would be a good thing. Goodbye news channels, goodbye YouTube, Google Maps, and that costly flight to Barbados. And it doesn't stop there. Without reliable weather satellites, our ability to predict severe weather would be compromised. This could put millions of lives at risk and make disaster preparedness far more challenging. We use satellites in disaster response. Disrupting these satellites means we wouldn't be able to plan and foresee the impact of hurricanes, tsunamis, and earthquakes. Yes, the threat is real. So after learning about this, I was curious. Aren't there any laws and enforcements to ensure the removal of those objects from the orbit, preventing the unstoppable space trash generation and keeping Kessler syndrome from happening? Well, the main law governing space activities is the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which states that space is for peaceful use, and nations are responsible for their activities, even those by private companies. And while this is a foundational document in international space law, here are two issues. One, it was created before the rise of commercial space companies and mega satellite launches. And two, it does not explicitly address the issue of space debris. More recently, the UN approved the guidelines for the long-term sustainability of outer space activities, which aim to more explicitly address the issue of space debris. While countries have their own space regulations, there isn't any sort of international body with real power to enforce rules globally. This means most guidelines for handling space debris are just that, guidelines. Compliance is voluntary, leading to uneven practices where some players prioritize sustainability while others may not. Without updated global laws and real enforcement, the risk of irresponsible behavior grows, making the potential for a space crisis, like Kessler syndrome, all too real. The situation today is at its all-time bad, and if we don't alter our course, by 2050, collisions could multiply unchecked, choking off access to space and risking billions of lives. Now you know that our species is the only one capable of generating 2.3 billion tons of solid waste inside our planet, and we need to be responsible for the trash we produce. It's a difficult task, but we can work together and come up with creative ways to reduce its impact. However, when it comes to space waste on the orbit of Earth, who will take responsibility? We don't yet know. But as a global society, we must demand change. I'm trying to do my part with the tools I have, social media, and my brain, so I made this video to try and raise awareness for our sake and the future generations. Do you think it's time to voice our concerns and pressure those at the helm of space exploration and regulation? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, ignorance is BS. Stellar Tropic signing off. Over and out.
Game begin.
If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and maybe share it with a friend. This costs $0 and help me keep creating great quality content for you.